Hello and welcome to Unlock series. This is Dr. Nisha Mathew here with another poem. Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines by Pablo Neruda. Before moving on to the analysis of the poem, let me give you a briefing about Pablo Neruda. So, on to the biography. Pablo Neruda was born as Ricardo Eliezer Neftali Reyes Basualto. That was the name given to him when he was born. He was born in Chile on July 12, 1904. Later, during his teenage years, he changed his name to Pablo Neruda. He was basically a poet, diplomat, and politician. He has written a novel called as The Inhabitant and His Hope. He has written an autobiography named Memoirs and also has volumes of prose to his credit. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971 and breathed his last of cancer on 23rd September 1973, leaving for the world volumes of poetry to be relished and enjoyed. Moving on to further details of Pablo Neruda, he was called as the Whitman of the South, mainly because of his great admiration for Walt Whitman, who was a pioneer of American poetry. Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, that was published in 1855, was in fact a prized possession of Pablo Neruda. He was greatly influenced by this great poet Walt Whitman, such that he has also adopted a few of his features and his philosophies. Another important description of Pablo Neruda is that he was called as the Picasso of poetry, mainly because of his ability to adapt changes. It is said that he was in the vanguard of change, and Picasso, for instance, was the pioneer of Cubism that revolutionized 20th century European painting. Pablo Neruda is also called as the poet of many styles and voices. This is in tune with what was just mentioned now. He was the one who wanted to bring in lot of changes into his writing. He wanted to try out many styles. He wanted to experiment with his language. He wanted to bring in surrealism as well as symbolism into his works. And he has tried to provide voices for many people. He became the voice of the common man. That is why it is said that he was the poet of many styles and voices. And another important fact about him is that he was at war with his own tradition. He was a revolutionary at heart, someone who was craving for a lot of change, and he was always constantly in search for a new system where he could express himself and his views. And no wonder why his poems were not accepted initially because of the revolutionary expressions, because of the revolutionary ideas he tried to encase in them. But he was not ready to give up the passion that his poems encased or the poems contained, because he was aware that his poetry of passionate longing was artistically significant. His manuscript was rejected by publishers, and this was how he responded. He wrote, "He'll be sorry, they'll all be sorry." And this was how Pablo Neruda responded to the publishers who rejected his work. And this became a prophetic line. And therefore, he sought the help of a number of established literary figures like Pedro Prado, who was the director of Chile's Museum of Fine Arts, in order to get his work published. Now, which work are we talking about? Yes, it is his first work, 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, that was published in 1924 and translated into English in 1969 by a number of writers, of whom W.S. Merwin is very important. And this work was ultimately published by Nascimento. And this work, it celebrates love, lovemaking, and the longing to make love, which makes the collection extremely erotic in nature. So to say, Pablo Neruda replaced idealism with sensualism. He appealed to the senses. He was rather interested in expressing the pleasures of the flesh, and he also substituted abstraction with concreteness. Everything had to be concrete, everything had to be portrayed and showcased to people as concrete images, and for which he made use of a number of symbols and imagery. He openly spoke of the erotic passion and sensual delights of the flesh. Carnal pleasure was one important aspect or element of Pablo Neruda's collection, 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. So, these are some of the reasons why the book was rejected, or this manuscript was rejected initially by the publishers. They feared the public response. But ultimately, when this was published, it sold millions and millions of copies, providing Pablo Neruda a very special place in the hearts of the readers. And given on the side of the slide is an example of a poem written by him. Of everything I have seen, it's you I want to go on saying. So, this is another example of how Pablo Neruda expresses love. In every line, the love is felt. And it can also be seen how beautifully he has expressed it, how simply or using very simple language, he has tried to express the passion of the heart. At the same time, he has also made use of images. I love your orange laughter. I'm moved by the sight of your sleeping. What am I to do? Love, loved one. I don't know how others love or how people loved in the past. I live watching you, loving you. Being in love is my nature. So this is what you call as simplicity, a simple expression of your true passion. That was Pablo Neruda, one reason why he was well loved by the readers. And in 1926, the 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair was published in 1924. And in 1926, he published another work called Venture of the Infinite Man. And in 1933, Residence on Earth. In 1950, Canto General. And remember, these were all published during these years in Spanish. The language adopted or the language used by Pablo Neruda was Spanish, and these were all translated into English at later stages. And I have already mentioned about the novel written by him, The Inhabitant and His Hope, and the name of the autobiography is Memoirs. And Pablo Neruda, he had to leave Santiago and the Chilean avant-garde as he had to go on a diplomatic mission to Burma. And that was a time when he faced a lot of difficulties. It was a time of difficulty for him, and the inner anguish has been recorded in the poems written during those times. And Neruda, initially in the initial part of the lecture, I did mention that he is called as the man of or the poet of many styles and voices. So this man Neruda, he is called as the voice of the voiceless because he has always tried to connect himself with people. There is an intuitive connection that he makes with people, as he says, I have always wanted the hands of people to be seen in poetry. So he wrote for the common man. He wanted the common man to feel his thoughts. He wanted to infuse the thoughts of people in his poetry. And that is why he says, I want their hands also to be seen in my poetry. No wonder why he is called as the man of many styles and voices. He became the voice of the voiceless. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez, he called him the greatest poet of the 20th century in any language because you can come across almost all the major events of the 20th century being recorded in the poems of Pablo Neruda, be it the Soviet Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, Nazism and Stalinism, massacres of World War II, imperialism and colonialism, political and economic insolvency of Latin America because this land was a part of Latin American nations. Chile was part of Latin America, and he has very honestly recorded all the issues in Europe, all the issues that were taking place in the world in the 20th century, and they have all been recorded very honestly and piously in his poems. And more to say, he has also written about Fidel Castro's revolution in Cuba. He has spoken about student upheavals of 1968 and also the arrival of socialism in his own native land. So, almost all the major events that have had a place in history have been recorded in the poems of Pablo Neruda. And therefore, it can be said that he was a chronicler of history. His works chronicle, his works portray, they paint the tumultuous times, the difficult times the world had to face in the 20th century, because 20th century was a time of dramatic and drastic changes. 20th century was the time when we witnessed the first and the second world wars. It was a time when we visioned, or when we actually saw the world thrown into pieces, experiencing extreme difficulties. All these have been recorded by Pablo Neruda in his poetry. So to say, he is not just a person who knows to write about love, he is someone who delves into the depths of any issue that he comes across. So his life itself can be seen as a voyage of awakening to the possibilities of art. He explored the possibilities of art. He looked at the various nuances of art. He wanted to experiment with language. He was very comfortable with the elasticity of language. He was conscious of his own self and also responsible towards society and history. And Residence on Earth and Canto General are two of his most important works because they speak much about the condition of Latin America. The terror that was imposed by foreign religions, especially with the coming of the colonizers. These nations were highly colonized, and they were held under threat. They feared the impositions, the imperialism impositions forced upon them mainly because of foreign religions, and they had to face a lot of exploitation, as a result of which children had to face malnutrition, and there was alcoholism, poverty, and disease. These were all major issues that his nation had to face, and they have all been recorded well in his Residence on Earth and Canto General. And a very important thing about Pablo Neruda is that he is known worldwide. Even though he wrote in Spanish, he is known worldwide because he is the most frequently translated poet on the globe. His works have been translated into almost all languages. Even if you look at Indian languages, we find that his works have been translated into Malayalam, into Hindi, into Urdu, Bangla, and into all possible languages. This is Pablo Neruda's concept of poetry. He says that poetry is song and fertility, emerged from its secret womb and flows fertilizing and singing. So that is the power of poetry. It has the ability to fertilize. It brings out whatever is hidden in you is brought out. It kindles with its welling waters. It works at milling flour, tanning hides, cutting wood, giving light to cities. It is useful and wakens to find banners along its banks. Festivals are celebrated beside the singing water. So, even in the lines that he has written about poetry, you find music, you find it to be very lyrical, and you find Pablo Neruda as a voice of the voiceless. He speaks about people, and you find the signature of people. Being brought in, the signature of people in these lines as well. So, this is what he feels strongly about poetry. It is a song, it is fertility, it brings out the best in you. It can be seen everywhere and anywhere. So, that is what poetry is. Now, with this introduction, let's move on to the explanation of the poem. Let's take a look at the poem. Tonight, I can write the saddest lines. This has been taken from 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, which was the first published work of Pablo Neruda. It is not that he just started writing for this particular publication. No, he has written as a young boy. He has contributed to newspapers and magazines as a teenager. And then he brought out this collection, 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, in 1924. This Now let's read the poem and analyze it. This is a very simple poem, and as I mentioned in the introduction, Pablo Neruda writes in a very simple style. It's very transparent. The meaning is very, very clear from the lines that he writes. Now, tonight I can write the saddest lines. That is the beginning of the poem. The title is actually the first line of the poem itself. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, the night is shattered and the blue stars shiver in the distance. So it is sadness, that is the mood of the poem. The narrator has lost his beloved. He has lost the love of his beloved. Not that the beloved is dead, the beloved has gone away from him. The beloved has stopped loving him. So he is involved and engrossed in her thoughts, in her memories. And he is extremely sad that he has lost her love. And tonight, this night is the night when I can write the saddest lines. It is night. He is composing the poem at night. That is because he is not able to sleep. That itself shows the bad mood he is in. He is very uneasy. He is disturbed. He cannot sleep. He is wide awake thinking about his lost love. So it is the anguish, the agony of lost love that you can come across in the very first line itself. Today, I can write the saddest lines because the narrator is completely engrossed in the thoughts about his beloved. And what does he write? What kind of lines can he write? He says, for example, this is one line that I can write. For example, the night is shattered and the blue stars shiver in the distance. See, you can come across contradictory moods. See, the night can create a very romantic atmosphere too. It is a time when couples think about each other. It is a time when they get to reflect on their love, and that is a time when they actually create a very romantic mood. But in contradiction, or quite contradictory to such a romantic mood, here the narrator is alone. He feels alienated at night. He sits there, looks at the sky. It is night, and he sees or he feels that the night is shattered. Everything around him is shattered. He is not able to find any coherence in nature, not even in the night sky. He looks at the blue stars in the sky. For an ordinary lover, for a person who was deeply in love, the blue stars would twinkle. And even for a child in the rhyme, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the star is a creation of wonder. It is something that instills curiosity. It is something that instills wonder in the child. But look at the mood of the narrator. The narrator is completely shattered. It's not just the night that is shattered, the night is shattered. Why? Because the narrator is shattered. He is completely distressed, and that is why he feels that the night is also shattered. This is called as transferred epithet. You're transferring your mood onto nature. So this is something that you can come across in Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, written by Thomas Gray, wherein the first line is the curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The plowman weary, the plowman plots his weary way. So it is actually the farmer or the plowman who is actually weary and tired, but the poet uses this technique of transferred epithet to transfer the emotion of the farmer or the peasant onto nature. So similarly, the narrator here says that the night is shattered. So it is actually the shattered mind that gets reflected in the night. And the blue stars, which are usually representations of love, which are usually representations of delight and pleasure, it now shivers in the distance. It is not twinkling. As far as the poet is concerned, it is now shivering in the distance. Why could it be shivering? Maybe the narrator's eyes are filled with tears. That could be one reason, because when your eyes are filled with tears and when you look at a distant object, you feel that it is shivering. So perhaps the tears, his eyes have swelled up. It must be filled with tears, and maybe because he is looking through the tears that he feels the stars, the blue stars, are shivering in the distance. So the blue stars are actually far away, and he remains below on earth at a corner. He feels really shattered, distressed, and extremely unhappy. So even the blue stars in the distance, they do not twinkle, but rather they shiver. So this is the day, this night, he could write the saddest lines. And this is the first line perhaps he could write. The night is shattered and the blue stars shiver in the distance, which absolutely captures the mood of the poet, wherein he is shattered at heart, and the blue stars he looks at could be looked at through the tears in his eyes, and he feels at a distance from the blue stars that are shivering there. It cannot reach out to him. The night wind revolves in the sky and sings. So the wind, there is a small wind, there is a breeze in the sky, and look at the speciality of it. It is revolving, it is not going away. There is a persistent wind, the wind or the breeze, it keeps on revolving, and the sound of the wind is music to his ears. He feels that the wind is singing. And then he repeats, tonight I can write the saddest lines. This night, today, this night, I can write the saddest lines. And this is the saddest line that he would like to write. What is it? He brings out the reason. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. So there is an iota of doubt there. I loved her. He is very certain about his love for her. I loved her. He is very certain about it. There is certainty in his utterance. I loved her. And sometimes she loved me too. And why does he use sometimes? That is actually a doubtful statement. He raises a doubtful statement. He says, sometimes she loved me too. He is not very certain about her love towards him. And sometimes she loved me too. Through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. I kissed her again and again under the endless sky. Now he speaks about more intimate situations. He remembers the time when she used to sit with him, when he used to hold her in his arms. He used to give her kisses under the endless sky. Endless sky, the sky looked like eternity. The vast sky provided them an umbrella under which they used to sit and share their love. She loved me sometimes, and I loved her too. She loved me sometimes. Again, the poet does not seem to be certain about the love of his beloved. So he once again says, she loved me sometimes. At certain times, she used to love me, and I loved her too. And every time he is quite certain about his love, he says, I loved her too. How could one not have loved her great still eyes? Now, it's a description of her physical beauty. No man could prevent himself from falling in love with her great still eyes. It's a beautiful description of the eyes of the lady. It looked still, it looked beautiful. So I was in love with every part of her. I was in love with her great still eyes. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. I to think that I do not have her. So this is the night when I can write the saddest of lines. To think that I do not have her. This is the reason for the sadness. I do not have her with me anymore. I do not possess her anymore. To feel that I have lost her. So it is actually very sad to say that I have lost her, and I can feel it in my heart. My emotions, they have been, unstable. They've become unstable. I can feel the passion. I can feel the love for her, and I can feel the sadness that I have lost her. I do not possess her anymore. To hear the immense night, still more immense without her. Now, the night is very vast, it's very immense, very intense. He is feeling very lonely, and it has become all the more vast and it has become all the more immense without her. We usually say when we do not have our beloved with us, when we are away from our beloved, you feel lost, you feel really sad. So that is the condition of the poet as well, or the narrator as well. He does not have his beloved with him. So he remembers those nights when he used to spend, um, romantic nights with her, when he used to have romantic moments with her, when he kissed her to his heart's content. And now he says, it's really sad, and I feel the night to be very vast and immense. It seems not to end, and especially without her presence. And the verse falls to the soul like dew to the pasture. And the verse is a reference to the lines that he is composing. It's a reference to the poem that he is composing. The verse falls to the soul, and the verse or the poems, the poetic lines, they spring from my soul, or they come to my soul, they emerge from my soul, or they come to my soul, they fall into my soul, just like we have dewdrops on pastures, just like we have dewdrops on the surface of leaves and flowers early in the morning. So it is naturally coming to my soul. It is coming out of the sadness that I feel. It is extremely natural. It is very, very natural. What does it matter that my love could not keep her? The night is shattered and she is not with me. So, what does it matter that my love could not keep her? I loved her intensely. My love for her was very pure and passionate. But then it could not keep her. I could not win her over to my side. And the night is shattered. The night is nothing. It is now shattered. It is no more. It is torn into pieces. And she is not with me. That is the one reason why the night looks shattered, because my beloved has left me. She is not with me. This is all. This is all that I feel. In the distance, someone is singing. So he could hear some sound. He could hear some words flowing in the wind. It was someone singing. In the distance, my soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. So my soul finds it difficult to make itself understand that it has lost her. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. I do not know how to console myself. I do not know what answer to give my soul that is craving for her. I long for her. I love her dearly, but I have to understand the fact that I have lost her. I'm not going to get her anymore. So, all these lines very precisely capture the intense, the profound emotions, the profound anguish, the sadness that the narrator feels at having lost his beloved. Every line, it has been very superbly written. It has been written with precision. It has been written in a lucid, transparent style. Any person reading it can feel the sadness of the narrator. There is no complication at all. Now, with this, let us continue with with the rest of the lines. My sight searches for her as though to go to her. So he is not able to satisfy his soul. Now he starts searching for her. He goes around looking for her. His eyes keep searching for her. My heart looks for her and she is not with me. So it is not just with the external sense. It is not just with the eyes that he looks. He looks with the heart. He looks everywhere. He looks at every corner with his heart for her, and he realizes that she is not with him. The same night, whitening the same trees, we of that time are no longer the same. So, the same night, whitening the same trees could be a reference to the falling of the snow on the trees, so that when it is morning, the trees could be filled with snow. It could be a reference to that. So, it is the same night, whitening the same trees, we of that time. So we also belong to that same time, but we are no longer the same because love has separated us. We are far apart. She has left me. She is no more with me, and nothing seems the same to me again. I no longer love her, that's certain, but how I loved her. So this lady has left him, and he has also given up his love for her. But what pains him is the thought about how much he loved her once upon a time. But how I loved her, that is what is causing the pain for him. He thinks about how much he loved her once. My voice tried to find the wind to touch her hearing. So he is trying to use the wind as a messenger. He is trying to transfer his voice onto the wind so that the wind could take his words or his voice to this lady's ears, and his words or his voice would touch her hearing. Another's, she'll be another's, like my kisses before, her voice, her bright body, her infinite eyes. So once again, the poet or the narrator is taken over by emotions. He feels extremely sad to think that this woman would belong to somebody else again. Just like he belonged to her, she would now belong to somebody else. And she would be kissed by another person, just like he used to kiss her. Her voice, her bright body, her infinite eyes, everything would belong to another person. I no longer love her, that's certain, but maybe I love her. So I don't really love her, that's very certain. But he is rather confused. He is perplexed. He is not able to come to a conclusion whether he loves her or he loves her not. So he says, I no longer love her, that's certain. He's quite certain about it. But the very next moment, he feels doubtful about it. He says, but maybe I love her. Maybe that love is still there in my heart. Love is so short, forgetting is so long. So, love is so short, it's so easy to cut short your love. It is so short, it can be stopped at any moment. Forgetting is so long. Forgetting, it's quite difficult for one to forget what has happened in his or her life. So, forgetting it takes a really long time. That is something wrong with your mind. You cannot forget things that have happened in your life. It's quite difficult for you to erase it from your mind. Because through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her, because it's quite difficult for me to forget. It's not possible for me to push back my memories. Why? Because during nights like these, I used to hold her in my arms, and my soul is not satisfied. My soul is not happy that it has lost her. Though this be the last pain that she makes me suffer, and these the last verses that I write for her. So this could be the last pain that she has made me suffer. She has just gone away from me, and I suffer the pain of her loss. And this is the last pain that she can induce in me. And these are the last verses or lines that I would write for her. So he is going to put a full stop for all the love that he has been showing her, for all the love that he has been carrying, all the love that he has been carrying in his heart for her. Everything has been poured down in the form of these lines, and he's going to stop it. And now, let me just tell you one thing. This poem was originally written in Spanish, and this was translated later. It has been translated by many writers, and the version that I have taken is from the syllabus prescribed for the BA English students of University of Kerala. And I realized that in other translations, the line is "the night is starry," and in the version that I have received, it is "the night is shattered." And on analysis, I find that in some of the translations, it is "the night is shattered," and in some, "the night is starry." So what I have followed is the poem given by the Kerala University to be taught to students of BA English Language and Literature. So the night is starry or the night is shattered, it would both convey its own meanings. The night is starry is that the night is filled with stars, and here the night is shattered, it is more in tune with the feelings and emotions of the poet. So as far as BA English students of Kerala University are concerned, this is what you have to follow. So I think I have made the poem clear to you. Thank you for your patient listening. And if you have any doubts, please raise it in the comment box. Thank you.